This is the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast with Nick Cattles.
Everybody, welcome back to the Greg Bedard Patriots Podcast, brought to you by FanDuel, the exclusive wagering partner of CLNS Media, where new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Plus, if you bet $5, you get $100 off NFL Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. And AG1, the daily foundational nutritional and supplement that supports whole body health. We are pleased to bring in one of my buddies, a friend of years, tears, and many beers at many league functions, Jeff McLane of the Philadelphia Inquirer. Jeff, how are we doing today, bud?
What's up, Greg? How you doing?
Good. Interesting team you're covering. A lot more interesting than the Patriots have been of late, which makes for an interesting Week 1 matchup between the two teams. Before we get started, a little sort of newsy item that I wanted to get your take on. The Patriots signed Jalen Reagor, who was, I think, a first-round pick of the Philadelphia Eagles a few years ago, to the practice squad. I don't know much about him. From what I've seen, it's been a forgettable sort of NFL career to this point. But, you know, what are the Patriots getting? What's the upside? What's the downside of this guy? Why didn't he work out in Philly?
Yeah, so, I mean, that was a pick that was very, very much panned here in Philadelphia as soon as it happened because Justin Jefferson was the guy who was picked next. And, you know, we all know how that turned out. And he was kind of like a guy that seemed obvious. And Reagor was more of a projection because he had some speed in college. And they all talked about how, you know, while he didn't run a great 40, he had game speed, as they, you know, you've heard that term before. And it really didn't translate here. And he really struggled. I think there's a lot with him beyond just the fact that the speed didn't translate. It was just like getting to know the system and having good hands and running the right types of routes. So, and then I think, you know, obviously the pressure of being a first rounder in Philadelphia and you don't really thrive right away can get to some guys. That being said, he got another opportunity to go to Minnesota where he doesn't have that type of pressure and really couldn't get on the field. And they brought him in the return punts, and that was even something he didn't do well in Philadelphia. So there's obvious talent there, raw talent because of the speed, but I think they're probably just taking a flyer here, or maybe they think that, I don't know, he was in the Philly system, the Nick Sirianni system for a bit. Maybe they think he can, you know, you've seen this before, right? You're bringing guys on the practice squad that know a particular system. Maybe that had something to do with it. I don't know. I don't think he's going to be out of the league soon. I don't think he really has it, but.
Yeah, I think it's just a look, this guy's got traits. Let's bring him in sort of as a tryout, and, you know, he could be gone in a week. I don't have very high hopes for him. So, you know, back to the Birds. Last time we saw them, they were going 14-3, dominating the NFC playoffs, thanks to, you know, 49ers quarterback injuries, but losing by a field goal to the Chiefs in the Super Bowl. Sort of, you know, catch us up. You know, what's different about this version of the Eagles, if anything?
I think primarily on the defensive side is where you're going to see most of the differences because they lost a number of guys to free agency. They were able to keep some guys, but they lost their starting middle linebacker and TJ Edwards to the Bears. They lost both their safeties, CJ Gardner-Johnson. They were willing to bring back, but there was a lot of going on there behind the scenes, but he ended up walking and going to Detroit. Marcus Epps, kind of like not really a great safety, but he left, and they lost Javon Hargrave was the main guy they lost up front. So that's kind of the middle of your defense there. Not pretty significant, but they have Nakobe Dean that they drafted in the 3rd round a year ago, and they've groomed him, and he's going to step in and be the Mike. They have Reed Blankenship. He was an undrafted rookie last year, but he got like 5 starts under his belt, and they really like what they see out of him. And they still have both starting outside cornerbacks, Darius Slay and James Bradbury. They still have Fletcher Cox in the middle. They have Hassan Reddick, was one of the best edge rushers last year. Josh Sweat, who was very good. You have Brandon Graham behind them. And you have a bunch of young guys. And two of their first round picks the last 2 years are defensive tackles, Jordan Davis and Jalen Carter. And both those guys they're gonna play. So you have like young talent up the middle But there's some question marks about, we haven't seen these guys perform much, so we don't really know. And then there's probably the most significant addition, which is Sean Desai, the new defensive coordinator who stepped in for Jonathan Gannon. And he has 1 year as a coordinator in Chicago, but that's really it. So there's a lot of questions about what that scheme will look like.
Offensively, here, let's stay on the team as a whole. So, the track record of Super Bowl losers is not good, especially early the next season, the whole Super Bowl hangover thing. Are the Eagles aware of this? Do you think they handle it? All that stuff.
They're aware of it because I guess Nick's been asked about it a million times. And I think he's kind of done the math and looked at the history of it and kind of looks at the particulars of each team and what played a part in it. He won't give all the results of what they found out, but he said injury has been a huge factor in a lot of those teams not being able to get back. And for whatever the reason, maybe, the length of the season and guys getting banged up and maybe the short off season played a role in all those injuries. The Eagles were one of the healthiest teams last year. And they haven't really had many issues here in the preseason either. So now we all know what can happen once the season starts. I mean, all bets are off and, there's bad luck and guys can get hurt, but they've done a very good job over these last several years of keeping guys healthy, the soft tissue injuries down. So they feel like maybe they have kind of an infrastructure here in place medically and in terms of their sports science department that they can kind of keep those injuries down and that won't affect them. But yeah, real quick and offensively, a few small changes. Isaac Seumalo, the starting right guard, he moved on via free agency, and they're taking Cam Jurgens, who they drafted in the second round, to be Jason Kelsey's eventual replacement at center. They've groomed him now to be the right guard for, I guess, a year or whenever Kelsey retires. And then the running back, Miles Sanders, who was basically their workhorse last year, or at least their number one guy, he left via free agency as well. So they brought DeAndre Swift in, they brought Rashad Penny in, and they have Kenny Gainwell that they're bringing back. They'll be the three primary running backs. But other than that, that's, they're pretty much 4 of the other 5 guys, the offensive line were on the team last year, both outside receivers, Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert at tight end, and of course, Jalen Hurts at quarterback.
How are the expectations in Philly? Are they sky high for this team?
Yeah. Obviously people in this town are always kind of like cautious, just because they've been snake bitten so many years before. But I don't care about that, right? You don't care about that. Let's look at what's really there on the roster. And they have Howie Roseman, the GM, was able to do a very good job of kind of minimizing the losses in free agency. They let guys go, but they were able to retain some of their guys. And, they've really kind of invested a lot in the draft over the last few years, knowing that they're going to have to replenish with their 4 core guys are Fletcher Cox, Brandon Graham, Jason Kelsey, and Lane Johnson. And those guys are all 33, 34, 35, 36. So they've begun the process of getting ready for when those guys go. So you have, again, the last few years, Landon Dickerson was drafted in the second round. Devontae Smith was drafted in the first round. Both those guys produced right away. The next year's draft, Jordan Davis, Cam Jurgens, and Nakobe Dean didn't really play last year at all 3 of them. But you have those guys kind of in store. And then, of course, people are out of their minds about Jalen Carter, and you have Nolan Smith. So I think people like the balance of the old and the young here. So they feel like there's certainly an influx of talent there. Nick Sirianni, they obviously got all the way to the Super Bowl, got very close to winning it. And I think people were happy that Jonathan Gannon left here in Philadelphia. They felt like it was the talent more than it was a scheme, and that, the Super Bowl pretty much showed ultimately that he wasn't really a kind of a big game coordinator.
We will talk more about the Birds in just a second, but let's take a break to hear from our fans from FanDuel. Get ready for the NFL season with incredible offers from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. I love those little suckers. I use them all the time, especially now that football season's coming up. Just use them all the time. It's free money, and you can make money off it. Plus, all customers who bet $5 will get $100 off Sunday Ticket from YouTube and YouTube TV. By the way, I did this. I placed a few early season, what I guess you would call seasonal NFL bets.
Yeah.
And there it popped
futures?
up right into my email. Yeah, some futures popped up right into my email. $100 off YouTube. And that's where you're going to get Sunday Ticket this year. Not on your TV, or you're going to need it through YouTube. That's the only place to get it this year. So visit FanDuel.com/Boston and kick off the NFL season with an offer you won't want to miss. FanDuel, the official partner of NFL. Okay, Jeff. So there's been a lot of talk in New England about sort of their easy summer, their easy training camp. They did go to Green Bay for joint practices. They're pretty good. They're fully padded. They didn't do any one-on-ones. The Patriots haven't done one-on-ones in practice since August 8th. I've never seen anything like it. They canceled the two-a-days with the Titans after the Isaiah Bolden injury, and for a bunch of reasons, including, from what we understand, Mac Jones was already hurt behind that makeshift line in the Green Bay preseason game, taking 2 blindside hits. I also heard that, the Eagles, they didn't play many people in the preseason, did they? Like, how do you feel? How was their summer training camp? Like, getting do you think these guys are ready to play week 1?
Yeah. So what they've done increasingly here in Philadelphia, and Nick Sirianni, I think it's more like Howie and the sports science staff, but Nick has gone along with it, is like really dial back on the number of practices. They only practice 6 times in the spring formally. It's crazy here. Like, the first week or so was like every other day. They have like walkthroughs some of those days, but like we're not allowed to be there, and like walkthroughs aren't really practices. I thought Nick was kind of trying to push the envelope sometimes, but like, there was like hour and a half. I think there was like 1 hour and 40-minute practice. It's crazy. And people were like, when we started reporting this, especially last year, people were like all up in arms. They're not gonna be ready, blah, blah, blah. They're not tackling. They did play the starters in the first preseason game, but then basically didn't after that, because they had joint practices with the Browns and the Dolphins, one of which was canceled, the Dolphins, because they had like a food poisoning incident when we were down there in Miami. But it didn't matter. They like came out like gambusters and won their first 8 games. So you tell me, my dog's barking there. You tell me like whether that's an issue or not. So they're pretty much going with that under that same premise this year, and they haven't had any of the starters, none, play in the preseason. They had 2 joint practices with the Browns and 1 joint practice with the Colts. And again, these practices are not long. They're not very intense in terms of the contact and hitting. Maybe thud, and then in terms of when you guys have practice with themselves, they've had one-on-ones. And I think I could see Nick trying to maybe push it a little more with this team at certain points. Because maybe he is concerned. He doesn't want anybody kind of taking it for granted, especially the new guys. But, based off of last year, I got to say they're ready, because they did well against the Browns, especially the second practice. They really kind of outperformed them. And the Colts, as you'd expect, it was just a completely uneven affair.
So, they did start 8-0 last year, I think it was.
Yeah.
Now, the Lions game, at least the score, was close. It was high scoring. Do you remember anything about that game? Did you think they came out all right?
So one was that the line splits the crap out of Hurts, and the O-line was not ready for it. Because they had no idea that schematically what they were doing. Because did they have a new defensive coordinator? They had a new offensive coordinator, the Lions, and he's really good. And
Aaron Glenn.
Aaron Glenn was defensively, and he blitzed him a lot. The offensive line wasn't prepared for some of the exotic blitzes that they threw at him. Jalen Hurts, to his credit, was able to kind of make something happen with his legs, and everyone's like, "Oh, how long can they sustain this?" It ended up being, obviously they got better at that and picking up the blitz, and Jalen got better at seeing the blitz. but they also threw the ball a bunch of times to AJ Brown. He had like almost like 200 yards receiving. Just throw it up to AJ sometimes. So that was what I remember offensively. Defensively, so there was concern offensively about just about the blitz pickup. Defensively, they allowed I think DeAndre Swift, who they end up picking up, had his best game rushing, and so people were very concerned about Gannon's scheme, and I think the issues then were, like, so they play like they play the Vic Fangio scheme.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's basically, 3-man front on rundowns, and they'll go to 4 on obvious pass. And Jordan Davis was the new nose tackle that they drafted, first overall, moved up for him, and they weren't really using him a lot. And then the other guys they had in that spot just aren't like nose guards. So you saw them attacking that the Lions on the ground. And it just seemed like Gannon couldn't adjust to it, and they just scored. I mean, it was probably the worst defensive performance they had until the Super Bowl. In fact, he got things tightened up after that, and I think people realized that the Lions were better than many were expecting, and the offensive coordinator was a really talented guy. And they were able to throw a few times on them too, as well. So that was what I remember about that game.
Yeah. So, the offense, I mean, largely the whole cast of characters is back outside of, I think you said, right guard. From your vantage point, from watching practices and stuff like that, like, do you have any concerns about this offense? I mean, is there anything that you think the Patriots are looking at and say, like, we can do, because they basically have they're going to have to win on defense. I mean, they basically have everybody back. A few, youngsters should be out there, including the first-round pick, Christian Gonzalez at cornerback, which, if he gets A.J. Brown, it should be an interesting matchup. I mean, the kid's talented, but, that's a whole different challenge. But anything that – if you had do you have any worries about their offense heading into the season?
Well, I mean, obviously it was one of the best offenses last year, and A.J. had like an MVP caliber season. But I mean, like every year to year, you have to be unsure about how it's going to look, and whether they're going to be able to stay ahead of what defensive coordinators are going to do to take away what they were effective with last year, right? So schematically, I want to see if they're not too reliant on what worked for them in the past. I remember like 2018 after the Eagles won the Super Bowl, Doug Peterson, he wasn't ahead after that. They were very good at kind of having different plays out of different formations. They were very conscious of that. And so, and I think they just kind of lost sight of that in 18 and 19. They had other issues going on as well. But like, so I think I have to ask Nick about this. And he said, we're really trying to stay ahead of the curve here. To me, the issues a little bit with Jalen are like, okay, here's this guy you just signed to this huge contract extension. Do you need to dial back a little in terms of the +1 quarterback run game? Because that is huge for them, not only in the run, but also in the run option game. So how much of that you want to do, but you also don't want to get him injured. And that really frees things up for the other running back. So it'll be interesting to see how much of that they do or don't do. And then, sorry, I'm going to turn off my mic here, but my blimper here. So that's a concern. And then, but they have, like, obviously skill all over the place. I mean, but right guard, Cam Jurgens has never played a real live game at right guard. So Bill is going to be like going right at him, right? And quite frankly, like, I thought he's a little up and down in camp, and then a couple of the joint practices, especially against the Colts, in that practice there. He was one of the few weak spots, I thought. And I think Cam's going to be really good. I liked what I saw him even last year as a center, and I think maybe he'll be fine. He's a little on the smaller side for that position, so I'd be concerned about that. And then, of course, there's like the big picture question is like, okay, is Jalen going to be able to maintain that level? Is he going to be able to kind of still develop, but also be able to handle how they're going to attack him, sort of thing? You know, at this, and I've always been saying this because I've been talking to people, is like, I don't ever count Jalen out. I mean, I really, you probably watched enough of it to know that like what he went in terms of passing went from in terms of year one to year two to year three is just like mind boggling. But he still hasn't like been asked to like win games exclusively with his arms. Teams haven't really found a way to make it say, okay, Jalen, it's got to be your arm and that's it. And also like win it late. So he hasn't really kind of had the 2-minute win it with my arm situation yet. So maybe if the Patriots get them into that situation, maybe it's something that could play to their advantage.
Yeah. I'll be interested to see what they do. I mean, knowing Bill, and I've already seen it during the course of the summer. I've said this a million times. You can't ask for a better week to face the Eagles than week one. I mean, not only coming off training camp, but like that offense, like say they played them in week 10. It's so different and there's so much going on in terms of like the 6-back offense, like you said, the +1, that it's hard to prepare for in the normal game week. But they've had all summer, and I've seen them, doing scout team. They've had Malik Cunningham, out there in the quarterback role. Like he gives them a decent look. Like, they've had all summer to get ready for this, and they better be ready for it. I think that the Patriots can't ask for a better opportunity, at least defensively, to do what they need to do to win the game against the Eagles and give them wrinkles. And I think Bill's going to be dead set on, look, we are going to make Jalen beat us from the pocket. That's how we're going to win this game. And, even, just for you, Jeff, and sort of your preparation, go and look at the Green Bay preseason game and how they rushed the passer. They did, even in that game, they did their mush rush. Nobody goes by the quarterback. If they bring 5-man pressure, it's a 5-man wall. Don't give them, like they were even practicing back then, you could tell, to get ready for the Eagles. So, they will definitely do that. Let's talk a little bit more about the defense in a second, but let me tell you about our friends from AG1. AG1 is the daily foundational nutrition supplement that supports whole body health. I drink it literally every day. I gave AG1 a try because I was tired of buying and taking a million different pills and vitamins. I wanted something quick, convenient, and packed with all the good and essential stuff I needed to get through the day. I drink AG1 first thing in the morning before starting my day, and it makes me feel like I could take on the world. Tastes great, gives me a little boost, and then later on is the big payoff. Off AG1, I'm grinding to get through the day, looking at the clock. On AG1, I'm primed and sharp, especially mentally, for my very long days, especially during training camp. Covering my nutritional basis for the day literally couldn't be any easier, which is why I trust AG1. I just mix 1 small scoop with water and drink it first thing in the morning. Done. I also like that it costs less than $3 a day. Pretty good if you ask me. It's a really effective daily habit with high-quality sourced ingredients. Win-win. If a comprehensive solution is what you need for your supplement routine, then try AG1 and get a free 1-year supply of vitamin D and 5 free AG1 travel packs with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/Bedard. That's drinkag1.com/Bedard. Check it out. Okay, Jeff. So Sean Desai's the new DC. I don't know much about him outside. I see that he's one of these like lifers who never like sleeps and never stops churning the film and looking for edges to win.
Yep.
What are your impressions of him and watching him this offseason? And do you think he's ready for, the challenge of, Bill O'Brien's an experienced guy who's going to have some wrinkles and some stuff ready for him?
Yeah. That's a great question. And, I was even going to say to you in terms of when we're talking about the offense, it's like, I know this offensive scheme. I know a lot about it at this point, 2 years of Nick running it. Obviously there's going to be changes in the offseason, but they're very cognizant of us and obviously in the joint practices and obviously in the preseason, people having film of what they show. So I don't know where it's going to, I don't know what the wrinkles they're going to have. I do think that like the mush rush, obviously kind of like against the zone read, having the unblocked someone behind the unblocked defender to kind of cover him in terms of the read element of that for the quarterback has been one way to kind of curtail Jalen. I mean, the Todd Bowles in that playoff game and the Buccaneers, the perfect way to stop Jalen, and Jalen as a thrower just couldn't match it. Last year, teams tried to do that, and he was able to match it, which brings us to the defense. And the reason I bring it up is because it's really hard to tell what Sean Desai is going to do. I mean, basically what they show us is what you see in very much a vanilla type of scheme. And that's whatever Gannon had showed us previously in practices. Again, he's really more Fangio's acolyte than Gannon was. Gannon kind of learned it from someone else. Desai worked with Fangio in Chicago, and he kind of nurtured him and brought him up. So he's really a Fangio guy. And in fact, Pete Carroll brought him to Seattle because he wanted to kind of change that scheme, his scheme. Can you believe that? That great cover 4-3 under scheme that he had so much success with. He brought in Desai to kind of crib some of those ideas. You know how it is in the NFL. Like the new fad was the Fangio scheme. And there's a lot that goes into it. So I expect to see a lot of the same. There's gonna be a lot of zone covers, gonna be a lot of too high safety looks, at least pre-snap. But I think you're going to see a lot of that in general. Like they don't want to give up the explosive play. Fangio, and I think Sean Desai falls on it. I think he'll end up falling into that category as well. So, good quarterbacks have to be accurate. They have to, take advantage of missed tackles, that type of stuff. I think he's going to be a little more exotic in his rushes. Gannon kind of got a little static in terms of now. That being said, they got like 70 plus sacks last year, but I think that was a combination of factors. But I think Sean's probably more willing to. I don't think he's going to blitz a lot, but I think he's definitely going to be like, hey, we're going to have show double A gap and or like show overload, and then maybe just drop whoever and still send 4, but give the impression that you're sending more. Than I think you'll see a lot more of that with Desai than you saw with Gannon. But that being said, I don't know. It's really been hard to tell what it's going to look like when it really comes game time, and certainly that plays into this conversation. They don't want anything getting out there, and they certainly don't want Bill Belichick and Bill O'Brien having any idea. But look, those guys are smart. They know what the Fangio scheme is, and it's basically in its basic elements.
And it's interesting that they face Sean Desai and then the Godfather Vic Fangio in week 2. So this schedule actually works out if they can do anything offensively. Are there any personnel concerns on defense that you think I look for the Patriots to sort of test them here to see if they can make a few plays?
Yeah, I mean, it's got to be the middle. It's got to be the linebackers and the safeties. I mean, Kobe Dean, while he's got the college pedigree, he's like on the smaller side. What I've seen out of him, he did play a little bit in the one preseason game, and he was hurt before that, so he missed the first game. They had him play in the second game. He kind of his technique on certain things didn't look great to me, but then he made a splash play and got like a forced fumble at the 1 yard line or something like that. But he's a rookie, smart kid, but he's a rookie, right? And he's gonna be your Mike out there. He's gonna have to call the play in. He's gonna have to set the front. I mean, that's a lot, right? And I think that's a lot for this. They ask a lot of their linebackers in the scheme. Typically, the Fangio scheme asks a lot of those inside linebackers. So, and then the other inside linebacker is going to be probably Zach Cunningham, and they brought him in just at the beginning of camp because they just never invest in that position, which I understand. If you're going to go weak, you go at that position. And then safety, the same thing. Never really invested that position. Reed Blankenship, I like the kid, but 5 starts last year, fine. And then the other safety spot, that's the one we don't really know who's going to start there yet. Now, I think they're going to have probably some sort of rotation, maybe, based upon matchups. And those guys, the other guys up for it are Terrell Edmonds, Justin Evans, who are 2 veterans, and then they have a rookie, Sidney Brown, who they really like, but he's a rookie. Are you going to really throw the rookie out there in this situation? So I think that's where that's where they're going to go at misdirection, maybe, get their eyes. I don't know. You probably know much better than I do what Bill will do, but
Yeah. It'll be interesting. I mean, I think they're going to do well. This goes into sort of, our general thoughts about the game. Like, I doubt that you've made a game pick. I haven't made a game pick yet. Like, I'm just starting to get into the Eagles. But, from my vantage point, if the Patriots defensively, after they basically return everybody and they've had all summer to get ready for this, if they don't keep the Eagles somewhat in the mid 20s and give themselves a chance to win, like if the Eagles come out and they score on their first 3 or 4 possessions in the first half and it's over at halftime, like, look out below up here. I mean, their only hope is that the defense is elite, because I look at it and I'm sure they've just been so beat up on the offensive line, and I don't even know how good they are. I mean, Trent Brown is the left tackle starter. He's inconsistent, but he looks pretty good this year. Cole Strange, who's probably going to start at left guard if he's ready, hasn't played all summer. He's been hurt. David Andrews is really good at center. Right guard, Mike Owenu. Strange and Owenu just started practicing like in the last week. Owenu's a good player, but I don't know where he is physically. If they have to go backups there, including a rookie, like, good luck. And then right tackle is just a complete crap show, like to the point where they had to go and trade for 2 guys on August 27th who have barely played in the league, and their other alternative is a rookie who's just been overmatched at right tackle. Like, you could get away with that against a lot of teams. I mean, the Eagles are like the purple people eaters. Like, they're just like, it's waves of people and large humans, and I just don't know how the Patriots are going to block these guys. I assume I think they're looking to survive this game, and there's going to be a lot of quick games, a lot of draws, try to run the ball a little bit, take shot plays once in a while, but they are going to try to get the ball out of Mac's hands as soon as possible so he doesn't get killed, because that's what happened in the opener last year in Miami when they got blindsided. He got knocked out for multiple games in the third game against the Ravens. Like, right now where the line is, that's where they're headed for. So, look, do I like getting the Eagles early? For the Patriots defense, yeah, but I think the Patriots offense is in survival mode. I have a tough time seeing them winning this game or covering or anything like that. Would you be surprised if the Eagles lost this game, or how surprised would you be?
Yeah, I mean, like, it's nice to hear, like, a point of view of someone who covers a team from there, in terms of, like, like, we tend to be like down on the teams that we cover, sort of thing. I mean, I'm not down on this team. They're probably they're the class of the NFC, which is not saying much because the NFC sucks this year, but, like,
Yeah,
they're still good, and they took the Chiefs all the way to the end of the Super Bowl, and they're returning a lot of guys. Like, offensively, I mean, they're stacked. And I guess if you're the Patriots, you think, okay, our best versus their best, maybe can help us keep it down, keep the scoring down, and their worst versus our worst, maybe it cancels it out, and somehow they kind of, on the road, they have some struggles. It's early for them. They have whatever, miscommunication. Sean Desai maybe, isn't quite ready for the job and calling plays in the situation. And so, things kind of snowball from there. It's possible, in the NFL, anything's possible. Has the line been out yet? I mean, I wonder. It's got to be. It's not going to be the road contest, but touchdown maybe 6.
I think.
7.
Oh, I think it's less than that. I will check in a second, but I do think that while I'm looking for that, I do think that the formula for the Patriots is going to have to be like old school, like NFL. Like, they're going to have to play really good defense, keep teams in the 20s. They have invested a lot in special teams. I know the Eagles don't even care about special teams, but they've invested a lot in that, and they were bad on special teams last year. But they're starting 2 rookie kickers in this, kicker and a punter in this game. The punter will be fine, but the rookie kicker, I mean, we'll see. But they need to make some turnovers, change of field on special teams. Like, that's their formula. I mean, they could do it. The line is only 3.5, Philly by 3.5 in this game. So that's a bit odd.
But I mean, again, no one knows. Maybe Belichick gets the benefit of that a little bit too much here. he's earned obviously the right. They're fearful in here in Philadelphia just because it's like Bill and it's on the road and it's the Patriots, but like this isn't the Patriots of Tom Brady, so not even remotely close. So yeah, I don't know that I don't know what that line is. Vegas typically knows something that we don't know, I guess, but again, like you said, this is probably the best time to get the Eagles in the first game of the season. This is kind of the Eagles' first month or even 2 months aren't like devastating. They have a run though in November and December that's on paper looks really tough. They got the Bills, Chiefs, Dallas. They got a really tough run of teams there late in the season. It's tough for me. I'm going to pick the Eagles. But I haven't really. First I've really kind of thought about the Patriots is now talking to you. And I don't even know, what do they have at receiver?
It's going to be Devontae Parker, Juju Smith-Schuster. Kendrick Bourne will be the third guy. They do have this exciting rookie, Demario Douglas, 6th rounder, who I'm sure they will use a bit. And then they got the double tight ends, Hunter Henry and Mike Gesicki. So you'll see a lot of 12 personnel probably. But that's what they're going to try to run with Rondre Stevenson. Ezekiel Elliott will relieve him. Probably with the rush being a factor, I could see Zeke being the third down back in this game because he does know the Eagles a little bit and he's good at pass pro. But the Patriots, everybody's worried here about they start with the Eagles, the Dolphins, they're at the Jets and at the Cowboys the first 4 games, and their first 8 games. Personnel,
so they go 12 personnel. That then they'll keep the Eagles' bigger defense on there. Which I guess, do they want to keep their 3-4 front on their more, and then attack the line? Attack the linebackers. I guess makes sense to me. That makes sense to me. I could see them really going a lot of heavy 12. The Eagles, I don't know exactly what the personnel packages are going to look like if they go. Nickel is Avonte Maddox is a slot. But I'm sure the big nickel, they've done certain things with the safeties. I don't know who that's going to be. And they do have they do have kind of various dimes. You mentioned Juju. It's funny. I don't know if you know this story. Like Juju, when social media and after James Bradbury had that holding call in the Super Bowl, really took shots at him and stuff like that. So it's interesting to see how that plays out. So that's kind of a little bit of a subplot there. But yeah, when you mentioned some of those names on offense, it seems like kind of a lot of, I wouldn't say has-beens, but
yeah, they're not scaring anybody. Plus, even if they roll out 12 personnel, it's not like you're intimidating to be like, oh, well, we need to match with our base personnel. Because, all right, Hunter Henry is an okay blocker, and Mike Gesicki's not a blocker at all. So if they're out there in 12, you're just like, what? You could put a cornerback on Mike Gesicki, and he probably won't block them. So I'm sure there's a lot of discussion about that going on.
Don't disparage my Penn State boy.
Yeah, there you go. Okay, I'll let you go. It's Labor Day weekend. I don't want to keep you. Thanks so much, buddy. Make sure you guys check out, the week of the game. There's nobody better on the Eagles than Jeff. He's been covering the team for years and giving me intel over at the Philadelphia Inquirer, inquirer.com. He also has the podcast Uncovering the Birds, which I'm sure will be all over this game. And who knows, maybe I'll make an appearance one of these times if he deems me worthy. Jeff, appreciate your time, buddy. Can't wait to see you this weekend. If you get into town early, give me a call. We'll grab dinner and catch up.
All right. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it.